Good day, everyone. I am Giselle D. Dolpina, your presenter for today, and I will be discussing about who are the authors of multimedia resources. Over the course of the last decade, ICTs have reshaped the contours of production profoundly in all sectors. Changes in the development of materials for teaching and learning have occurred most visibly in expanded range of available modalities, with interactive CD-rooms, web-based simulations, and intelligent tutors among the array of new resource types presented to educators and policy makers. Before the widespread adaptation of ICTs in universities and in schools, educational resources were generated largely by private sector publishers or centralized government-operated organizations. Textbooks, instructional audio tapes and videotapes, and broadcasts require substantial investment in content development and in the capital equipment required to make that content available at scale. There are four developers of multimedia resources. The first one is institutional developers. Institutions, universities, government or privately funded research facilities, and international agencies may be effective developers or sponsors of multimedia resources, initially free of cost and market considerations that may limit development in the private sector. Successful resources or approaches may be transferred later to the private sector for support and elaboration. Under these institutional developers are KRDL Learning Lab, Revid or Even, Educar, and Links. Let's talk first about the KRDL Learning Lab. Singapore's Ministry of Education has adopted a centralized approach sponsoring and implementing resource development by the Kent Ridge Development Laboratory, or what they call KRDL, a research lab funded by the state and corporate sponsors. Private sector development of education software in Singapore focused throughout the 1990s on resources that supplemented mastery of the K-12 school curriculum in preparation for the university entrance examination. Based on its consultative relationship with the Singapore Ministry of Education, the KRDL Learning Lab has developed, in contrast, internet-based environments and tools that support the Ministry's vision of a shift in learning from mastery of facts and skills to building knowledge. These resources include infrastructure for collaboration, support for 700 simultaneous persistent project-based groups of 2 to 5 students each, specifically targeting learning-based collaboration learning. Next, shared mind tools. Development of 10 commonly used multimedia tools for use in 2 to 5 student collaborative groups. Third, iAssess. Development of a web-based client-server software infrastructure for providing intelligent assessment services that can be externalized to allow students to realize their strengths and weaknesses. Last, History City. Built on NetEffect technology, a network 3D virtual environment for children aged 7 to 11, using communication, collaboration, and construction to teach children about Singapore's national heritage. The KRDL projects address core objectives in educational transformation outlined by the Ministry of Education, with ICT seen as playing a crucial role. Second institutional developer is Revid or Even. Revid means Red International Virtual de-Education, with URL http://www.revid.org, known in English as the International Virtual Education Network, or EVEN. Several Latin American countries have contributed expertise and funding to the collaborative development of educational modules. These are intended for use in math and science education at the secondary school level, incorporating well-defined and contemporary processes into the teaching of these disciplines. Modules are composed of elements like videos, animations, simulations, text, exercises, and etc. that can be combined flexibly and are accompanied by a teacher's guide suggesting how to use the modules. The flexible use of various elements enables satisfaction of country-specific requirements and at the same time allows reuse of linkage among disciplines and topics. Institutional developer is Educar. The edoc.r portal or http www.edoc.r, the official education portal of the Ministry of Education of Argentina, aggregates resources for all educational levels and is representative of the many national education portals now emerging in Latin America. Edoc.r incorporates a dynamic database that is updated very efficiently. It has information on events, training information for teachers, and information on adventures and contests for students. The portal also features chat and translation. And the last institutional developer is Links. Project Links, or HTTP's links.math.rpi.edu, funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation, or NSF, has its aim the production of a library of interactive learning materials that highlight mathematics for science and engineering. The learning materials are intended for integration into existing courses and follow a predefined structure of navigation and instructional design. Each module requires 1 to 3 class periods. The second developer of multimedia resources is private sector developers. Private sector activities in multimedia development can also be extremely varied, whereas private sector activity for much of the 1990s focused on development of CD-ROM-based multimedia, with mixed results in terms of both educational and financial success. More recent activity has explored a range of models involving the Internet. Under these private sector developers are Cognitive Tutor, Private Sector Portal Development, and Challenges to Private Sector Ownership. The first private sector developer is Cognitive Tutor. The Cognitive Tutor math products of Currently Learning Incorporated exemplify an approach to multimedia development that is grounded in cognitive science, computer science, and hands-on teaching and learning. The product line addresses algebra and geometry at the secondary level in the United States, drawing from the efforts of John R. Anderson of Carnegie Mellon University in cognitive theory and intelligent tutoring. The products: first, present math problems in the context of real-world situations and experiences. Second, facilitate inductive learning. Third, enable collaborative learning and peer mentoring. And fourth, provide in-class curriculum activities. Next, private sector portal development. In countries in which institutional or national organizations have not yet established education portals, private companies have rushed to fill that gap. In the United States, BigChalk.com has emerged as the premier aggregator of education resources and services, offering a catalog of lesson plans, productivity resources for students and teachers that include professional development resources for teachers and a host of other resources. In contrast, in Turkey, where education is highly centralized under the Ministry of National Education, or MONE, portal services nonetheless have been designed and developed by a private company recently purchased by Cox Systems, the country's largest holding company. The ELMA portal, or elma.net.pr, also aggregates resources from a select group of sites. Private sector developer is challenges to private sector authorship. When private sector development of effective CD-ROM-based educational materials has been successful, as in the case of the cognitive tutor, success has come despite structural factors, chiefly economic, that have tended to limit the effectiveness of resources created by centralized development. It may be instructive to review those factors historically and their effects, in part to determine their continuing effect on centralized development for both CDs and the Internet. However, the various learning environment, school labs, after-school labs, and homes provide learners with radically different circumstances. The one learner, one computer configuration implied in the design of most commercially produced education software is rarely provided in a school classroom or lab, and these designs fail to support and may actually interfere with the essential social aspects of learning. With low profit margins and little incentive to develop school-only titles, developers have little reason to assume the risk of innovation. As evidence, the Cognitive Tutor product line was recognized in 1999 by the U.S. Department of Education as one of only 5 of 61 available math software products as exemplary after more than 10 years of multimedia development by the private sector. In 1999, the Turkish Ministry of National Education rejected all bids from software developers to a tender that was part of its basic education project, spanning 8,000 schools, because none of the projects met their requirements. The third developer of multimedia resources is teacher developers and collaborative efforts. Due in part to the challenges confronting private sector developers and in part to changes in pedagogical approaches, teachers in many countries have been seen as partners in and even drivers of development of technology-based learning resources over past 10 years. Under these teacher developers and collaborative efforts are the Educational Object Economy, or EOE, second, MERLOT, and the third is ESCOT. The Educational Object Economy, or EOE, emerged out of a 1993 NSF grant to the East or West Authoring Tool Group, a coalition of universities and publishers anchored by Apple Computer's Advanced Technology Group. In 1997, the EOE, or www.eoe.org, launched by a dynamic database served website as a place where users could post interactive simulations constructed as Java applets. For many reasons, the EOE has not had significant impact on education in the United States. Key factors include the diversity and scale of the U.S. education system, competition from a mature private sector, limited internet access in schools early in the project. However, since 1998, the EOE has begun shifting its focus to education systems in emerging economies, where multimedia development for education is beginning. The second teacher developer and collaborative effort is MERLOT. Based on the EOE model and seeding its repository with EOE applets, the Center for Distributed Learning of California State University has established the MERLOT project with http://www.merlot.org as a community focused exclusively on resources for higher education. The project has made several significant changes to the EOE model, including: first, collecting all learning resource types, text, image, audio, etc., in addition to Java applets. Second, providing dedicated programming services to faculty. Merlot has introduced a system of peer review necessary to establish the quality of the Merlot brand and, in theory, to position publication on Merlot as a tenure-track milestone. Additional challenges to the Merlot model arise generally from problematic relationship that surrounds faculty authorship, control of intellectual property, and commercialization of online higher education. Dedicated programming services increase costs in step with sophistication, with those costs often shared among several university departments. However, faculty members working with publishers arrange to bundle their Merlot-developed online resources with textbooks. The last teacher, developer, and collaborative effort is ESCOT. In another NSF-funded initiative, the ESCOT project with principal investigators Roy P., Jeremy Rochelle, and Chris DiGiano has created a collaborative testbed of software developers and secondary school teachers to develop small, interoperable tools to create mathematics simulations. Working with 5 exemplary and well-adapted math curricula, the teachers contribute both design requirements and learning activities. The involvement of teachers as co-designers is intended to ensure that the multimedia resources will be readily adapted in this classroom. Pairing teachers with developers for short-term development projects is intended as a model for increasing teacher participation in authoring compared with providing the teacher with end-user authoring tools. ESCOT, like the EOE and Merlot, addresses the high cost of multimedia development, seeking to implement one of the most promising of emerging engineering process integration of reusable software components. Components, also called objects, are discrete units of software code that can be combined or integrated to create usable software. In ESCOT's collaboration with the Math Forum, or http://www.mathforum.org, components are shared among 12 integration teams under a licensing scheme that protects attribution and intellectual property rights even after modification of a component source code. And the last developer of multimedia resources is students developer. Schools and school systems have increasingly, although in many instances not systematically incorporated, active learning pedagogies that engage students in synthesizing information derived from research across a range of sources, and in using information as the basis for alternative presentations, ranging from original plays and musicals to literacy magazines to real-world experiments in physics, chemistry, and other fields. Under this student developer are, first, a scaffolded approach to student authoring, and second, students catch up with the pros. A scaffolded approach to student learning. To demonstrate and build understanding, students must organize their knowledge in rich and content webs. Such organization has traditionally stimulated creation of concept maps. New tools now make it possible for students to perform concept mapping activities through the creation of hypertext webs. The latter case affords students several advantages, as they use their knowledge in authentic ways, demonstrating ownership, autonomy, and effective use of symbols, and making considerations about both the audience and context. Their constructions, then, can be considered a legitimate demonstration of understanding. The simplicity of HTML-based systems allows students to work comprehensively on longer-term projects without making files prohibitively large and difficult to manage. Also, the greater flexibility of hyperlinking in HTML afford students the ability to create, integrate, and organize networks that more accurately reflect their ideas and associations. Harrell has shown that students also learn when they are engaged in design. Students who design fraction software for other students using the Lego computer language learned fractions better than students who were taught fractions using conventional methods. In addition, the students who used logo to design software learned logo programming instructions only. Tools used should allow students to express themselves using symbols that are compatible with the field in question, and to test their products much like experts in a given field would. In this sense, Baxter, developed by Andrea De Sessa and his team at University of California, Berkeley, is an exemplary software tool for student use. One of the Baxter's main characteristics is that it permits, even in very specific areas, the treatment of open problems in ways that are critical to the development of higher-order thinking skills. And the last developer for student developer is students catch up with the pros. The availability and ease of the use of the tools mentioned above enable students to inch closer to professional developers. With these tools, students are able to develop websites that approach the quality of professional sites, or www.thinkquest.org, while enhancing their learning. Students usually develop pages or presentations that are static or contain simple movements. However, as we mentioned, the use of Flash is changing the pattern. These are the sites that aggregate many examples and tricks. Example, www.flashkit.com. The Stagecast site, or www.stagecast.com, provides examples of successful students used from grade 2 to university-level computer science. Using Agent Sheets, or www.agentsheets.com, students are also able to produce elaborated animations, in this case, by combining existing scripts visually and attaching them to graphic objects. One other possibility is to use Java applets that are not closed. These provide microwords that teachers and students can explore, changing parameters to generate their own applications and inserting them into web pages. A remarkable example of this class of applets is Descartes. And that's all my report. Thank you for listening and God bless!